Hi everyone. I just finished another correspondence game online and I had the black pieces and my opponent chose the four knights game and he played the Italian four knights, this move bishop to c4. Now I've been told by other players online watching their videos that that move is a mistake and it gives black an opening advantage. Well, after playing through this game and analyzing a lot of lines and then checking it afterwards with the engine, I don't think that's correct. I think people have a misconception about this opening. It doesn't give black an advantage. Rather, it just gives black almost immediate equality. So I think the reason masters don't play this move, bishop c4, is because it doesn't strive for an opening advantage like white is supposed to do. So black gets an equal position almost immediately. So much more popular than bishop c4 is bishop b5, the Spanish four knights, or even d4, the Scotch four knights. Even the move g3 is more popular in this position. Okay, so masters don't generally play the Italian four knights. Now, I think the most promising continuation for black is to play knight takes e4, which surprises some players that don't know this opening. Because it looks like black is just giving up a piece. But here's the point. If white takes the knight, which he did in this game, then black has d5, forking the two minor pieces with his pawn and regaining the piece. Okay, so my opponent played bishop d3, and I took the knight, and he takes the pawn back. So material is equal. If you look at the position here, I would say neither player has an advantage. The pawn on e5 looks pretty good. It's more advanced. White has two minor pieces developed. Black has only one. But black has open diagonals for both of his bishops. White's ready to castle. At any time, white can take on c6 and mess up the pawn structure here on the queen side. So neither player really has an advantage here. Okay, so here I realized white is making a threat. He's threatening to remove the defender of the pawn on e5 and then take on e5. So to meet that threat, I defended the pawn while developing the dark square bishop. And that's the most popular move in the position. After the game was over, checking the databases, I realized there's an alternative here that looks really interesting, although I probably won't play it in the future, which is this move knight to b4. So removing it from the c6 square so white can't capture it and ruin the pawn structure. And it's a threat to play f5, and that bishop is short of squares, and black might trap that bishop. Now there are two responses here that are typically played. One is a3, hitting the knight, and then f5 comes, and then bishop takes f5, and black takes the bishop, and white takes the knight. And then black can gain a pawn on b4, and white gets the e5 pawn, and black can castle. And so white is up a pawn in this position, but black's compensation is that he has the bishop pair in a wide open position, and he's better developed, slightly better developed already. So I think it's about equal. The engine gives white a slight advantage, but I think it's about equal. Okay, so in addition to a3, after knight b4, another move that's sometimes played is knight takes e5. But this game will descend into a chaotic mess. Okay, black can win a piece, but white gets a strong initiative. Black can try queen to d4, forking the minor pieces. White simply castles, ignoring that, threatening to put a rook on the open e file. Black can take the bishop, then rook e1 comes, and then queen takes c2. And it turns out white doesn't have any good discovered checks with the knight. The knight can't really attack anything. The knight on b4, notice, is defended by the bishop. So the best white has in this position, according to the engine, is queen to f3, keeping the queens on the board. White wants to attack since he's down a piece. He doesn't want to go into an endgame. And white's attacking this f7 pawn. So bishop to e6 develops a piece, defends that square, and blocks the e file. Very sensible move. But then knight takes f7 can be played because of the pin on the bishop. So black's king is looking like it's in a lot of danger, and white's threatening to win the bishop on e6. Okay, so black can play queen c6, defending the bishop, and again offering a trade of queens. But white can play queen to f5, not trading queens and attacking the bishop again, which remember is pinned. There's only one way to defend it, which is with the black king. So the king can come up to defend it, but this position is a total mess. I would never want to play this as black. The engine says it's negative 1.8, so white doesn't have enough compensation for the piece, and this was a speculative gambit, but it's really messy, and I just don't like this kind of chess. So going back, I don't think I would try knight to b4 in the future because of that line, knight takes e5. So I do like bishop to d6 still as my move in the position. And now my opponent played a rare move, d4, just exchanging pawns here in the center, offering an exchange of pawns. A more normal move is simply to castle. That's the most preferred move in the position. And then black can castle, rook e1. And rook e1 threatens this pawn again because white can take the defender on c6, and then white would have two attackers on that e5 pawn. So one way to address that threat is to play knight to d4, and then exchanging knights. And here white can try b3 to fianchetto the bishop to put pressure on that advanced d-pawn. And the position is about equal. So that's another way to play. There have been some games in the database that went along those lines. And in addition to castling, another move white can try is bishop takes c6, just trying to damage the pawn structure here on the queen side. And then since black is threatening to push the pawn to e4 to disturb the knight, d3 is a popular way to stop that. Then black can castle, white can castle, and the game continues. I actually prefer black despite the doubled isolated pawns because black has the bishop pair in an open position, which is a strong advantage. Okay, so going back, my opponent played d4, and I did exchange pawns here, and now he has two pieces hitting the c6 knight. So I thought about this for a long time and decided to play for quick development and to play actively with castles, ignoring the threat on c6. And we'll see how that worked out. Going back, I'll just point out if I had taken on d4, I didn't like the positions that arose after queen takes d4, and then castles. And now white can try to castle queenside with bishop d2 or maybe bishop e3, and then bishop e6 and castling queenside. And the reason I didn't like this position, besides superficially it just looks completely equal and I'm trying to find an advantage in this opening, but I think black is doing a little worse here because he's having trouble finding a resting square for his queen, so to speak, because this rook on d1 is pointed right at this queen, and there's no really good square to develop that to and connect the rooks. And white is just a little bit better here with that rook on the d file already in play. So I didn't go for that exchange. So I castled, allowing him to capture on c6. He decided to capture with the knight, which I think is the better capture. I was prepared for bishop takes c6, and I realized after b takes c6, white cannot capture the pawn because of queen to e8 check, winning the knight, forking the king and knight. So white has just given up the bishop pair. Black has the bishop pair in an open position. Black's already castled, he's better developed. So this position favors black. Okay, so I wasn't worried about bishop takes. He takes with the knight. And now, instead of taking back, my plan with this castling line was to play queen to h4. I'm hitting this bishop here, and it's a little awkward for him to meet this threat. So both of his minor pieces are under attack, and he has to decide what to do. He played the desperado move, bishop takes h7 check. Notice it's not so comfortable for him to move the bishop. It would actually result in some trouble on the e-file after rook to e8 check. And there's no satisfactory way to block the check. For example, if he tries bishop to e3, he simply loses the bishop because the f2 pawn is pinned. So moving the bishop isn't such a good idea. He could defend it with the queen, like queen to e2 or queen to f3, but still this rook is coming to the e8 square, pressuring that bishop and pinning it. And I think black has the initiative in those positions. All right, so my opponent tried bishop takes h7 check, and I took with the queen, keeping my king safely tucked away. And now he has to save his knight. And there are two squares he can move it to. He chose correctly with knight d4. Let's just point out some tactics. If he had tried knight a5, then black has the fork, bishop b4 check. Now he can save the knight with bishop d2, blocking the check and defending the knight. But after that, rook to e8 comes, and there's really, again, no way to block the check. So he has to move the king to f1. And now rook to d8 comes, pinning the bishop to the queen. And there's only one way to defend it, which is with the knight. So the knight can fall back, but then black can take the bishops off the board and then attack the knight again. And there's no way to defend the knight, so black is winning a piece in this line. So that explains why knight to a5 was bad, not to mention you just don't want to put your knight on the edge of the board. But he played knight d4, and I played queen e4 check, forking the king and the g2 pawn. Now he plays bishop e3 to block the check and develop a piece, and to further support his knight. Good idea. But already black has an advantage. I take the pawn, and now the material is equal, and my king is safer. His king is stuck in the middle of the board. I've got the bishop pair, so I really like this position. All right, now he played a suicidal move here. Probably the losing move was king to d2, using the queen to defend the rook. Okay, you really don't want to put your king in the middle of the board here. Maybe his plan was to put it on c1, but that would simply block in the a1 rook, which would have a hard time getting into the game. So that was a bad move. A better try would have been queen to f3, protecting the rook with the queen. Black can then trade queens, and then maybe play bishop g4, developing the final minor piece and attacking the knight. The knight would move away, and now that bishop is well placed, stopping white from castling queenside. And then maybe rook f e8, starting to centralize the rooks. And so white, again, is struggling because he can't castle in the position. His pieces are not as active as black's. Black has the bishop pair, so black has a good advantage. Okay, but that queen f3 would have been much better than king d2. Now black has a lot of good moves to choose from here. I chose queen to d5, pinning the knight and threatening pawn to c5 to win it. So he gets his king off of that file. And now I develop my final minor piece with tempo against his queen. And he blocks with his f-pawn. But then I just drop my bishop back to h5, keeping the pressure on that f-pawn. And so black's threat is to play c5, driving that defender away, and then taking that pawn on f3. Okay, so here he tries queen g1, trying to get some counterplay here, maybe counterplay against the g7 square, but it just doesn't work. In fact, in some lines, this simply traps the rook, and it can be captured on the h1 square. He's still in trouble after this move c5, driving his knight away. Now, he could move his knight away, but it just doesn't work. He's losing in all cases. For example, if he played knight to b5, which he didn't do, then I can play bishop takes f3 and threaten that rook, and he can give up the exchange here. But then his king is still in a lot of danger, not to mention he's down material, he's down a pawn and an exchange. And so I think black is just winning in that position. But instead of moving the knight, he just drops a piece. He plays bishop to h6, threatening a checkmate on g7, but I can simply take the knight and defend against the checkmate. So now black is up a piece, and it's a very easy finish from here. He tries bishop to e3, attacking the queen and keeping the queens on the board. Oops. But after bishop e3, I played bishop f4, pinning his bishop so he can't take my queen. And then he gets the bishops off the board. I call check. He moves his king to b1. And here I just start developing my rooks. Rook a d8. Notice I don't want to play this move. I could play that move. It's a fine move. But it doesn't win the exchange because he can play queen to f1, pinning the bishop to the queen. Okay, so instead of that, I just develop my rook to the d8 square. And I'm gonna get some back rank threats going here. He plays queen takes c5, and then I take the f3 pawn with my queen. And I'm threatening a back rank checkmate on the d1 square. And he misses it or ignores it and plays rook g1, and then I call check with mate on the next move, so he resigned. All right, so I learned something about this Italian four knights game. I learned that it's not an advantage for black, it's just an equal position, and you do have to play it very carefully on both sides, and it can become interesting. It is a possible way to play, but I don't think it's a good way for white to strive for an opening advantage. All right, thanks for watching the video.